Hello there. The EU looks like it's setting up to give the Celtic Tiger economy of Ireland a bit of a battering. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe, click the little bell, select all, and then like and comment below. Defying the odds, the Celtic Tiger economy of the Republic of Ireland has been forging ahead, with its GDP and GDP per capita rocketing ever upwards, except for a setback during the global credit crunch of 2008. It even saw off the pandemic. But the reality of all of this is that the GDP and GDP per capita figures are mostly built on high-tech businesses being headquartered there after being attracted by a very low 12.5% corporation tax, with only another 3 EU member states being that low: Hungary 9%, Bulgaria 10%, and Cyprus 12.5%. And for some of them, special deals had been hammered out where corporation tax was tending very close to zero for favoured corporates. And today, about 16% of Ireland's GDP relies on these big tech companies. But all this fast-rising GDP is a bit misleading when looking at the rest of the Irish economy, but more on that in a moment. Now, for the last few years, Brussels and some of its EU member states have been a bit upset with Dublin and its low corporation tax, and what many see as a too light-touch regulation by the Irish regulators where big tech companies are concerned. Now, the EU is keen to get weaving on obeying the OECD rules they signed up to get all its member states to increase their corporation tax rate to a minimum of 15%. Or more accurately, obey Joe Biden's minimum corporation tax drive. As we are told, it was Sleepy Joe's idea, although the concept of Biden coming up with anything original is a bit questionable these days. Anyway, this, coupled with other tax changes Biden wants to introduce in the US, might make a Dublin headquarters not such a good tax move as previously experienced. But it's not just that. Brussels wants Dublin to come down hard on regulating the tax companies to ensure they fully obey the General Data Protection Regulations, or GDPR. Something the Eurocrats think the Irish have been too soft on. But further, if Ireland has all these big tech companies headquartered there, then Brussels wants the Irish regulators to really ratchet down on them to ensure any new woke-based EU rules are stringently applied. So companies finding themselves working under a harsher tax regime and a very harsh regulator might start looking elsewhere to make their home. And that has started with Brussels telling the Irish to widen its investigations into Meta over its Facebook ads practices and privacy. So in response, the Irish regulators are taking the EU to its own EU Court of Justice on the basis that Brussels has overreached its legal remit in making these demands. The EU wants a slapdown, and Ireland wants a softly approach. Let battle commence to see who runs the EU internet, Brussels or Dublin. And also remember that the EU has been taking some corporation to the courts over what they say is too little tax being paid in Ireland. Now, the Irish government might think it's bad at the moment, but you wait until the moment comes when Brussels sees no more merit in needling the UK with the Northern Ireland Protocol. Then the political usefulness of Dublin will recede somewhat and leave them more vulnerable to an EU aching to flex its tax and big tech muscles. And that should worry the Irish government, because once the fig leaf of a big tech boosting their GDP is removed, there's not too much left. For example, Patrick Honohan, a former Republic of Ireland central bank governor, in his paper called "Is Ireland Really the Most Prosperous Country in Europe?" he said, "Ireland is a prosperous country, but not as prosperous as is often thought, because of the inappropriate use of misleading, albeit conventional statistics. Using GDP as a measure can mislead analysis of such matters as debt, carbon intensity and inequality." It wasn't until Irish state statisticians started talking about their economy in terms of an updated standard called Gross National Income (STAR) that reality began to shine through, because it showed economic activity being about 40% lower than reported GDP figures. On which Honohan wrote, "Ireland is not even in the top quarter of EU countries when the comparison is made in this way." And when Ireland showed a 26% boost in GDP in 2015, Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman gave it a name. He called it leprechaun economics. So when the EU starts twisting those tax and woke web regulatory knives, Dublin might be in for a very large shock. And now to electric vehicles. Again. More and more electric vehicle public charging facilities are moving towards the dynamic model of charging higher prices when the general demand for electricity is high. So it works out that if you use one of these smart public EV chargers between 4 and 7 p.m, you'll be paying something like 75% more for the privilege. But it does mean paying slightly less for the rest of the day. For now. So one can see how this could be manipulated in future to raise more revenue, or even tax revenues. Now, if in the new electric-only future, people are coming home and using their electric cookers, vacuum cleaners, washing machines, and electric central heating or air conditioning, and also plugging their electric cars in, you can see the national grid getting really stretched. So some of that load will be switched to overnight, especially smart charging cars. But if most people have an electric vehicle and transport is such a huge user of our power, then the heaviest electrical use will occur overnight and not so much during the day. So overnight load might end up being charged more for. So when people then don't do that, but leave home for work a bit early to go to a public charge point, there might be queues or congestion, which can then have higher charges attached as well. Depends on how smart these chargers get. If we do ever get to more than a small minority of people who can afford to purchase or run these things, that is. And there'll be an app for it, of course, telling you when and where to get the cheapest top-up for your battery and what time to put the bread in your toaster for the cheapest cheese toasty, etc. And in the corner of your app, it will have a number showing how many tons of carbon you have left to use for the year. And when you go past that number in July or August, extra taxes get automatically applied, just for you. Think I'm joking? So a lot of people will take the bus, train, bike and shoe leather, just what the WEF ordered, and limit themselves to within 15 minutes of their homes. Once again, just what the WEF and the UN want. Your life will get more miserable, and the elites don't care one jot. And finally, when subscribing, please don't forget to press that little bell and also select the all option, or you won't get any notifications when I publish a new video. And thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the show.